Hello, everybody. Mark Schaftlein with you, and this is the Schaftlein Report, Thursday's edition. And with Thursday, welcome Gary DeMar back as my co-host on a Thursday.
Hey, the news has been popping today. I mean, it's been absolutely crazy with all the goofy stuff that's coming out from the Democrats.
It is insane, isn't it, Gary? But you know what, Gary? They telegraphed this stuff. Then we knew what could happen if they won those two Georgia Senate seats. And lo and behold, every nightmare that you could possibly think about is happening right now.
Yeah, it's interesting that the Democrats, for probably for the first time in their history, weren't lying about what they were going to do, and they have, they're following through with it. Now, how far they'll get, I don't know. I don't know. The whole statehood thing is, that I think that's one of the topics we're going to deal with today, and it's a simple majority to bring in another state. You don't even have to do constitutional amendment for it.
Well, what they have to do, again, the issue that we're talking about here, folks, is in a committee in the House of Representatives. It hasn't even gone to the full House yet, but a committee is exploring, and they do this in every Congress. So this is nothing new.
Right.
It's been going on for 30 years. Okay. But the difference is this appears, folks, to be the first year that DC Statehood is actually going to make it out of a committee. Now, the likelihood of it going anywhere is slim to none because it would require 60 votes in the Senate. There's multiple senators that aren't going to go along with that. And again, if you anticipate that Republicans may retake the House in 2022, this is nothing more than a Democratic power grab. They're talking about shrinking the size of the District of Columbia down to the Washington Monument, the White House, the Supreme Court, or really tightening it up and then creating the other area around it as another state. Well, folks, if they really wanted to tighten up D.C. and give, statehood, they could just give the rest of Washington, D.C. back to the state of Maryland, which surrounds it.
Yeah, that was the carve out. I mean, this came out of Maryland.
Right.
They carved out a section of it all. It was never meant to be a state. And anybody who moved there to Washington, D.C. knew that going in.
That's right.
Washington, D.C. still gets 3 electoral votes, so they can, in fact, they do have a say in the presidential election. And you're right, this has been going on for a very, very long time. But right now, the Democrats are in power mode. They want everything as they can possibly get. We're already talking about packing the Supreme Court. This would be another feather in their cap, giving them another two Senate seats and I guess 1 representative. In an area that in fact is a very, very small city. Now the population of Washington, D.C. is around 600,000. It's greater than the state of Montana, but of course area wise it's tiny compared to any state in the union. I think Vermont may have a population size about the size of Washington, D.C.
Yeah, I think when you said Montana, you meant Wyoming. Because
Wyoming, yes.
That's what you meant. Yeah, folks, I mean, this has happened before. The difference is really, Gary, for the first time, it looks like, and again, this is the far left wing of the Democratic Party pushing this stuff. But the truth of the matter is, they control the committees in the House, some by larger than, in other words, the House is very close. I mean, it's like Democrats only have a 5-vote majority. But some of these committees, Gary, are like, there's 42 people on the committee and 25 of them are Democrats, 17 Republicans. So you get, by definition, more progressive Democrats in the House sitting on these committees, and things like this can come about. Folks, they hit us with 3 of them today. We may as well dive into all 3. DC Statehood, Gary, trying to pack the Supreme Court, which in all fairness, Pelosi said that's going nowhere. And a committee actually recommending slave reparations, which it hasn't come anywhere yet, but it is being discussed in committee that the Democrats control. Gary, slave reparations, packing the Supreme Court, DC State. Do you recall any Democrat campaigning on this, like a la Joe Biden or any of the, quote, moderate Democrats?
No, they didn't. I mean, they were always, like you had mentioned, this is a radical left-wing cause, and it's always been out there. I guess the question would be, why didn't they do this during Obama's administration? Here you have black president and reparations and so forth. Uh, he wasn't calling for this. Why now? But look, again, we've already mentioned this. Joe Biden, I firmly believe Joe Biden is not in control of the presidency. He is being pushed by the far radical left, and I think what you're saying here is, of course, Pelosi is not going to push this. She's having a rift with AOC on issues. I believe and I think she has a book coming out. She's taking on AOC, and then it's been determined that and AOC really has had no legislative impact whatsoever.
Right.
But there are those people who have been pushing this agenda from the outside in. They have a lot of sympathetic votes in there, and of course they got the media on their side. And what's happening in a lot of these cities because of black men being killed, it's just become a fever pitch issue that the Democrats are going to use to ramp up their power initiative while they have the chance before 2022 comes in.
Yeah, there's no question about that. And then you have to ask yourself the question, okay, so it came out today about, out of committee wanting to expand the Supreme Court from the current level of 9 justices to 13. Gary, it's no mystery. Why would they want 13? You had 4 more left-wing judges on. Now you have 7 left-leaning judges, 6 right-leaning judges. And that's counting John Roberts as leaning right, which is a stretch sometimes.
Right,
Having said that, and Senator Markey has the gall to think we're stupid. He says, well, we have 13 districts, so we should have 13 judges. I mean, Gary, it's when you have to rely on someone as far left-wing as Markey out of Massachusetts, and then Pelosi, to her credit, knows this is a political time bomb loser. She knows the American public doesn't want this. She knows the far left of the party wants it, but probably 75, 80% of the country wants no part of expanding the Supreme Court. Now, it almost seems like, and you heard the name mentioned, you knew they couldn't resist it, Donald Trump. It was just, you knew it would come out, and they're effectively saying, well, Trump put 3 on there. I mean, Trump shouldn't, he's not qualified to put anybody on there. And again, you and I know it's not based in fact, it's just stirring up the base, which is what they're doing here.
Yeah, and who is it that I think the left wing of the party is trying to get Breyer to resign, which is something that Ginsburg really should have done. I mean, I know she was holding out for Hillary to come in and nominate. She would retire and then she would nominate someone to take her place. And so they're trying to push Breyer out. And my guess is, I don't know Breyer very well. I know he's a leftist, but that may have just gotten under his skin a bit and says, I think I'm just going to hold out here as long as I can because of these nut jobs who are trying to push me out. So we'll have to wait and see.
He did. He made it crystal clear. He's not going anywhere. Nobody's pushing him anywhere.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about it is unpacking the Supreme Court. President Biden came out and announced earlier in the week that maybe he had a heads up that this was coming. So Biden did announce that he would have a commission study the issue over the next, 18 months, some figure. Maybe they didn't say the months, but Biden sort of preempted this, saying, well, he's going to appoint a bipartisan commission to study, and he didn't call it packing the court, but he said term limits, age limits, other things that could happen without pinning himself down, because Gary, he knows this is a political loser. I mean, if the far left wing of the radical Democrats pulled off a stunt like this, and Democrats in swing districts had to run against this, Katie bar the door. You'd see a Republican rout come 2022.
Yeah, I was telling my wife, I think what the Republicans ought to do is say, look, okay, you pack the court with 4. We will run on this until the time of the 2024 election. And then when we get in power, we'll put 15 of the most conservative Republicans on the court that you've ever seen. And again, I think what's going to happen is this is going to be a campaign issue. I think it's still going to be a campaign issue because now that they threw it out there that this is something that the radical left wants and a lot of Democrats want as well, this is going to position Republicans better if they get a spine, position the Republicans better to help them in the 2022 and 2024.
Yeah, no, there's no question about that. And, as far as the other pieces we've talked about, how popular do you think DC statehood is around the country, other than deepest of deep blue states?
Oh, it's just DC has everything. Everybody living in DC has everything they could ever want.
No kidding.
What they make in terms of a salary, the benefits that they get and so forth, what do they gain other than simply 2 Senate seats, which of course would entrench their power even more.
Right.
This is a power grab. Everybody knows it's a power grab. And the thing of it is, the Democrats aren't denying that it's a power grab. It is a power grab. That's what this is all about.
You're right about that. And okay, let's talk a little bit about slave reparations. How popular, Gary, do you think slave reparations are in the vast majority of the United States?
Well, I don't know about you, Mark, but I've never owned a slave.
No,
my parents never owned a slave. My grandparents came here from Italy. I don't know where they're in the mix of all this thing. Why am I didn't do anything like this.
No.
And then here's a question I haven't heard anyone answer or even ask. Look, Black people in the United States today are doing very, very well historically. You got multimillionaires. You have some Black billionaires.
Of course. Bob Johnson, in your home state, Bob Johnson.
Yeah, and Tyler Perry is another one. And you have Oprah Winfrey. Now, they've benefited by everything that white people have benefited by. Will they be part of the mix of reparations? Will they be forced to make reparations as well? Because they're as profitable as many white people are. The thing is ridiculous, and there's just no way. I can't see this as being something that the Democrats would continue to push.
No, the far left wing will push because that's what the far left wing does. Folks, that's the difference. The far left, they may lose the battles. It's sort of like having an army. They know they're going to lose a certain percent, but they keep pushing. And you're right, Gary, as you said earlier, in some cases, the media gets behind their positions. And then you've got the propaganda arm of the Democratic Party, which is the media. You have the far left, not even the center of the Democratic. This is the far left of the Democratic Party. And when you think about this, when you have to call Nancy Pelosi the pragmatic one, man, you're stretching it. Look, Schumer is he's starting the process to, quote, end the filibuster. My position is, Gary, I think this is nothing more than a power play to try to push Republicans into voting for some form of this stimulus bill. And I think, he's basically saying, okay, look, we'll give you X amount of time. I think one of the Democrats from Maryland, Senator Coons, said, well, we'll give them until the end of May to cooperate with us. And if they don't, we'll move forward on our own. Well, President Manchin's not going to like that. But President Biden, if he's really running the show, he will probably go along with whatever Schumer and the Democrats come up with. Because President Manchin has already said 25% top corporate tax rate. And, he's from an energy producing state. And you can't just tell West Virginia coal miners and natural gas people, well, go out and we're going to train you how to do green jobs. Hillary tried that and failed miserably.
Yeah, this is again, it continues to come down to this, and unfortunately, a lot of Republicans they like these so-called infrastructure bills and shovel-ready projects because it brings money into their district, and that's what scares me about all of this is that there are too many Republicans out there who will compromise on this, and Schumer knows it because it's the way the Republicans have worked for decades. That the Republicans come in and say, they won't say it like this, but basically we want some of that money for our district, and that'll keep me in power because I'll be bringing home the bacon to my district. I'll get reelected.
Well, the only difference is this year they're going to redraw some of these districts, so we'll see how that redrawing of the census plays itself out. But yeah, of course, at the end of the day, Gary, you and I have talked about this. There's likely to be some type of infrastructure bill. This does appear headed towards some type of compromise. And if push comes to shove of keeping the filibuster in place or stomaching some amount of Biden largeness in a spending bill, I think they go for the largeness in the spending bill because, again, what's an anomaly to the market. I mean, the 10-year bond was down, it was really up again today. I mean, price goes up, yield goes down. Gary, despite inflation knocking at the door, real estate prices going up, housing prices, lumber, copper, gasoline, dollar weakening, commodities up, 1.9, people had all those stimulus checks. Gary, this economy is rip roaring. And, I haven't seen the inflation yet, but the 10-year bond, I have seen the inflation, but the 10-year bond is telling us maybe it's not going to be that bad.
Yeah, well, part of this is you had David Bahnsen on there some time ago, and David put something out today about what's happening with lumber, and he says actually the price of wood is not the problem. The problem is the sawmills of actually, and they can't get workers to work in order to do the job.
That's
and
right.
Then the other side of this thing is, of course, is these stimulus checks. They're keeping people from going to work because they don't have to. Plus the extension of unemployment and the rise in the amount of unemployment.
That's right.
So this brings me back to this reparations idea. What do you think will happen if reparations are instituted? People getting reparations, this money, may decide they're just going to leave the economy. They've got enough money, maybe a year or so of money they'll burn, they'll burn through. And it'll keep them out of the economy. It'll keep their families out of the economy, and generational poverty will continue with this. So these factors, we're just not being told about it. And I think with the thing with the gasoline is, I don't know if that has anything to do with Biden's things on the pipeline issue. And
of course it does.
Yeah.
It's got supply and demand issues with the economy coming back. It's got the U.S. dollar weakening. Now there's the supply side too. At a certain point, when you see oil above $60 a barrel, the producer's going to start producing more, especially 65 or if it hits 70. They'll produce more. So you'll find an equilibrium in there for all you armchair economists watching us here. But Gary, you hit on a key point a little bit earlier I want to talk about. Between the federal unemployment benefits, which were extended, state unemployment benefits, stimulus checks, right now, it is hard for like restaurant owners. If you're a dishwasher, a short order cook, if you're making sub $15 an hour, Gary, okay, it's cheaper for you. You make more money on unemployment, on goodies that the government is giving you right now than you do working. And I'm hearing stories of business owners that cannot find employees because even at $12 an hour, $13 an hour. Again, some of these restaurants, just coming out of COVID, you can't pay wages like $15 an hour to a dishwasher. And now you're seeing chains like fast food chains saying, "What the hell with this? I'll just get robots to do it. And then once I pay for the robot, I don't have any more employment costs."
Yeah, I go into Walmart now, and Walmart has doubled the individual scanners you just go through, and a racetrack gas station. I don't know if you have them where you are.
Yeah, sure.
But the newest one they just built, they have 3 kiosks there, and our mutual friend Brandon Valerani, his assistant Liz sent me a message about they've tried to hire people and they come for a day or two and then they don't show up after that anymore. My son, who has a drive-through coffee business, Eliano's, it's the same type of thing that they're dealing with as well, trying to keep employees. And I wrote an article about this at AmericanVision.org, and I listed all these people who contacted me and all the trouble they are having getting people to come and work when unemployment is still relatively high. The jobs are there, but there are just the finances are. It's a balance after you pay, federal taxes, state taxes, Medicare, and so forth and so on, and driving to a job, gasoline prices and so forth. Hey, I might as well stay home and just cash my check.
Yeah, and to do it, what they have to do obviously is demonstrate, whether it's the state or the federal government, that they have applied for, or gone through a job interview. Because, they ask the question, have you applied for any jobs? Have you gone to a job interview? And what's happening, people are checking yes on that. And then when they ask them to come in, they're not showing up. They're not following through. And you're seeing the same thing in Georgia.
Yeah, it is. And it's all over the country. Actually, in fact, a woman who's a pretty conservative person, she wrote, she says, at first I took advantage of this money, and then all of a sudden it just hit her and said, look, this is ridiculous. This is like a drug. Once you get on it and you have this money coming in, it's hard to say no to it after a while. And I remember when Katrina hit, and the place was devastated. Had lots of people move up here, from the New Orleans area, and it was a revelation to them that life was different outside of public housing, and they were so thankful to get out of that and to basically change their lives. This type of stuff keeps people bound to the government, bound to the state. It ends up some people lose initiative, lose purpose in life. It's a bad thing for everyone.
Yeah, I concur. And, we're going to be going through it. I'm not sure when the unemployment piece ends, but we're going to be going through it for another few months. So, folks, again, this is simple supply and demand. Wages are going up. Prices are going up. People are going to have that effect. And if your labor pool is, again, it came out today, Gary. Again, stock market hitting all-time highs, but jobless claims hit the lowest level since the pandemic started today.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of counterintuitive, unless I guess the people aren't really, they're content to where they are. But I just know people are screaming for workers. I've seen help wanted signs up all over the place where we are here in Marietta, Georgia.
Yeah, folks, it's going to get crazier out there. And again, think about what we're saying here. Stock market's at an all-time high. The 10-year bond, which is supposed to reflect expectations of inflation, is rising in price, falling in yield. Jobless claims were under 600,000 this week. Again, you're back to pre-pandemic levels. I'm guessing, Gary, when the next unemployment report comes out, we're going to be somewhere in the fives. We were like 6.2, 6.3 before. I'm guessing that number may tick down a full point. Could be near 5% or lower.
So why do you think this is the case then? What's the backdrop of all this?
I can't figure out why, with expectations of inflation are rising, and Chairman Powell even said it when he did his press conference yesterday. Why is the yield on the 10-year bond going down, which means the price is going up when there's concern about inflation? Normally, if you have concern about inflation, the yield will go up because investors want to be compensated for the additional risk of holding on to a yield spread instrument.
Right.
But with the 10-year bond at 1.58, stock market hitting all-time highs, that is signaling that there's some prosperous economic growth ahead, and inflation is nowhere to be seen right now. And yet it's there. It's in the price you pay for a home, price you pay for gasoline, and everything above we're talking about. So I can't explain why the 10 years at 1.58. I'm somewhat perplexed by it. I thought we would be edging up somewhere near 2%, but based on global interest rates, a lot of countries still, Gary, have negative interest rates or near zero for longer term instruments. Yeah. And so people are saying, look, I can go to the United States and buy a bond and, get 1.6, 1.65 earlier in the week. That's where the money's coming. Money has a tendency to go where it's treated best.
Yeah, money is a coward.
Yeah,
it's a coward.
It absolutely is.
The essence of it.
Hey, a couple other points to catch up. I know we just got a few minutes left on our abbreviated show today. 24 people arrested in Minnesota last night. Already a charge of second-degree manslaughter. We talked about this yesterday on the show, Gary. Even President Biden is coming out saying, look, peaceful protest is fine, but we can't be having violent protests. We have to work through the criminal justice system. Even the president says that, but some of these folks aren't listening to him, Gary.
Well, I've heard that a part of this is a lot of people get out there in the peaceful protesters, and then what happens is that the radicals come in and say, "This is our opportunity. Let's get in here and let's turn this into something that we want." And I think that's what's happening because look, black people are in fact distressed about all this. Although the numbers in terms of unarmed black men who are killed much lower than most people
That's right.
realize.
Right.
And it's the media, of course, are pushing this. And I don't know if you saw the interview with this reporter and this fellow on the street, and he was just yelling and cursing at this woman, "Get out of here! You're causing the problem here. You're stoking the fires here." And it's given an opportunity to these radicals to come in here and turn what was originally a peaceful protest and maybe a legitimate protest, and
Sure.
turned it around and jeopardizing everybody. Whites against blacks, blacks against whites. It's a never-ending story that the left understands, and unfortunately, a lot of Americans don't.
Yeah, I mean, it's taking race out of it. It's just what I see is the far left against the police. That's what I see. And yeah, we debated it on the show yesterday about, would people be alive if they obeyed police orders? Sure, they would. They've been arrested, gone to jail one night, gone to court the next day, case dismissed, time served, you move on with your life. But that hasn't been the pattern of what's been happening in too many of these cases involving police officers and African-American males. So, Gary, it's been 4 nights in a row in Minnesota. We'll see what tonight brings. But people do not seem to be listening to authorities in these cases. My concern is, next week in the Chauvin case, they're going to do final arguments. So this Chauvin case likely gets to the jury maybe sometime mid next week. You've already seen businesses in Chicago start to board up in anticipation of this. I mean, Gary, the country's going to be on pretty high intensity on this one.
What do you think? What do you think the outcome is going to be?
I honestly, I've seen a limited amount of the trial. I wouldn't want to guess at this point. I think he may get if I had to predict it here today, I think the more serious charges, they're not going to convict him. It only takes one. He may get a conviction on some of the lesser charges. So if I had to guess, I think one of his charges is 3rd-degree murder. Now again, that's a serious charge, but it's not like it's not as serious as murder 2 or murder 1. And I don't even think he's charged with premeditated murder, but something of a lesser charge. Because again, bear in mind, and my clue to this, Gary, is when I look, again, folks, so you don't have to do it. We monitor some of the other media outlets. And when I start hearing liberal commentators sort of prepping their audience that, hey, the outcome of this could be less than you expect, that's sort of like code word for me saying, they are trying to prep their audience. Because, the MSNBCs, the CNN, they have a completely different perspective on this than you or I or Newsmax or Fox News or a conservative outlet might be. And when you hear liberals prepping their audience, I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think if he's guilty on any charge, I think the defense is going to come back and go on an appeal based upon threats in the media by leftist groups saying, if he's not found guilty, we're going to burn your city down.
Wow, that's been
and it's put pressure on the jurors to come up with something. They have to come up with something because their names will get out and they will have to move. They have to leave their residences, and who knows? They might even burn their homes down. I think the jury members have in fact are under a pressure to do. They've got to do something in order to. Save their lives.
Some of these liberals, like Sharpton and some of the other attorneys involved, flat out said it. We want a conviction or else.
Exactly.
And that's mob justice. Let's close it out here. Biden and the U.S. has put some sanctions on Russia. Obviously, the Russians aren't happy about that. Any comment, Gary, relative to what's happened on that issue?
I'm not real sure what's happened that we're doing this, and I don't know if this is kind of the runabout effect because Trump supposedly was friends with Putin and so forth. And what gets me about all this is that China is still the real problem.
No question.
Not Russia.
Right.
And yet they don't do anything about what's going on in China. And of course, you got all the virtue signaling companies out there won't say anything about China. Russia is not a problem. They're not going to attack us. They're not an economic power over against us. This is pure politics again.
Yeah. What some famous politician referred to Russia as a gas station with the military. So.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I remember when the former Soviet Union fell apart.
Yeah.
And then when finally the cameras went in there and looked at their Navy, and it was rusted out.
Yeah.
They had nothing. Putin is not going to jeopardize.
No, his lifestyle is too luxurious. He's got umpteen houses, billions in the bank. No, I agree with you. And again, the real issue is, where's the pressure on China? I mean, that's China economically, folks, is a powerhouse. And for those of you who don't realize it, it is. And that is the main economic issue related to the United States. Gary, close us out on some positive news as we head in towards the weekend.
Well, what I'm finding is that people are starting to push back. When Canadians are pushing back over some of these health monitors came into a restaurant, these Canadians stood up and told them to get out. And of course, there's that Polish pastor in the church who told these health inspectors to come in as well. When you get Canadians to protest against something, that's a positive sign.
Yeah. I'll close it out with this. Folks, for full disclosure, I got my second Moderna shot today, so I'm fully vaccinated. And it was interesting. The guy that gave me the shot, I couldn't even feel it. He said, okay, you're fully vaccinated. Now are you going to travel? I said, well, just so happens I got a flight tomorrow and I got one on Tuesday pre-planned. So he goes, wow, you're not wasting any time. He says, but you know what? You're fully vaccinated. Go out and live your life. And I said, doesn't it take 14 full days for it to kick in after the second? He goes, yes, but when you got the first one, you were 80% inoculated. You picked up another 20 and, live your life and, practice social distancing, you'll be fine. So, folks, again, on this show, we're not telling you to get a vaccine. We're not telling you not to get a vaccine. There's some split in the medical community. I've heard from both sides, but, for disclosure purposes, I've had mine and now I'm going to be getting on a plane tomorrow. So, and when I flew the last time, seats were 2/3 full. The air circulated fine. The people were friendly. They wore masks. They observed the rules. So, folks, when you hear stuff about, oh, it's so dangerous this, so dangerous that, live your life. Practice your social distancing. If a business says you got to wear a mask, wear a mask. But, Gary, life is slowly coming back in the United States of America, and the economy's going well. The worst thing the only thing in my view that could throw us off course is a dumb political decision out of Washington. And considering that Democrats are running 3 branches right now, I view that as the biggest risk to the economy. So
I do too. So,
folks, thanks for joining us today. Gary, as always, happy Thursday. Thank you for joining me. I love having you as my Thursday guest. We'll be back hitting it on Monday, folks. I'll be in a new location to be disclosed on Monday. Thanks for watching. Have a great weekend. Stay safe. See you Monday.